really excited to completely geek out with these amazing, amazing women filmmakers we have here now. And how I kind of want to jumpstart our conversation is everybody kind of go around, introduce yourself, please. And then please tell us where you're from, where you're calling in from, because this is international. We had people all over the world in our last talk back. And then also, so a little bit about yourself, where you're calling in from, and about your project.
Okay, I will start. My name is Kaylin Talamonte. My short film is Ambrosia. It is about a relationship in the 1930s, and it is based on my great-great-grandmother and her life. And it's a short 2D animated film. I am calling in from Champaign, Illinois. I'm in my workplace at Volition, which we are working on a new game to release.
I can go next. My name is Lydia Khan. I'm calling from Queens, New York. My film is called Markovcha, Korean carrot salad. And that's the story about Korean diaspora that were living in Russia in the former Soviet Union since 1860. And the story is told through my family story.
Okay, I'll go next. My name is Leo Mary Rodriguez. I'm from the Bronx, New York. My film is technically a part of a web series called Directed by Us. The episode in this film festival is directed by us with Maria Mejia, who is an entrepreneur that has been emerging her brand Pink Root Products through the natural hair community. And it's one episode out of many in the series, and I'm telling her story and why she ended up where she is at now. I'm also in my workspace working from home, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Leo Mari, we're almost neighbors. I'm up here near the George Washington Bridge. So for those of you that don't know where that is, I'm in New York City. My name is Halima Henderson. I live in Washington Heights. So pretty much neighbors, right, Leo Mari? I am the producer of a micro short called Sorry, which is a two-hander romantic with a question mark comedy. Some may think it's romantic, some may not. I'm a first-time filmmaker and also an actor, and this is also my debut as a lead person in a film. So lots of excitement on this end, and I'm really happy to be here.
Oh, we're so excited to have all of you guys here. Wow. Okay. First time filmmaker. Wow. Was Sorry. What an awesome piece. I loved it. Now I know you're casting that you're in it. So I was like, that's one of the questions I'll have for you guys. But first, before we go into the casting piece, I love to just touch base with what your experience was like directing, writing, producing your piece that's in the film festival now. If we could talk a little bit about that. And please just jump in. And if you guys have questions for each other, please do that too. So we want this to be like a conversation. So tell me a little bit more about your process and what that was like.
So my process started as, it was actually a pre-production course that I was taking at my undergraduate university, Bradley University. And so we started out with going over which story we wanted to tell. And I knew right off the bat that I wanted to do something that had to do with my great-great-grandmother. It's a very, it's kind of a secretive, it was kept under wraps for a while, what happened in my family. So I used this opportunity to kind of expose it. And so then once I figured out what I wanted to do, I ended up going back doing some genealogical research. And then I did storyboards, and I ended up cutting a lot of things because it was a short film and I'm the only one animating it. And to meet the deadlines for my grades, actually, you end up cutting a lot of things because time just doesn't, there's animating takes quite a bit of effort and energy. But yeah, so I went through storyboards, then I did an animatic, and then I started doing the line work and fine animation. So, and that was all on Adobe Photoshop, which is not usually everyone's first idea as an animation software, but I have a little plugin, and I used that, and it was very much like it was a hand-drawn flip book style animation. So.
Thank you. And then I have a quick follow-up question. How did your family respond to your piece?
They were excited. For a while, they were kind of like, "Are you going to tell people that this is true? Like, how much are people going to actually know?" And now it's pretty much all on the table. But my grandpa, who is actually my great-great-grandmother's grandson, he was supposed to come to the screening, but then COVID happened. But yeah, he was very excited. I think it was kind of like going through this, looking back at the family history was almost healing in a way, to be like, it's okay that this happened. And you know what? Like, even though she's ripped out of the photo books, we still acknowledge that she's part of the family, and that is a facet of our family history.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Wow.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Just jump in, guys, so that way I don't have to call you out. I mean, what your process was like, and just what it was like directing, writing, producing, everything, because we do it all. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. So my process, I didn't write or direct it. I did act and produce it. And my process has been pretty long. A writer, director, a friend of mine whose plays I did years ago and continue to do as they come up, said, "I think you need a calling card, and I want to write a film for you, but I'm not going to write it unless you ask me to." And so I went home, and my friends are like, "That's crazy. You should absolutely tell them that you want them to write a movie for you." And I got a phone call the next day that was like, "Hey, I wasn't kidding over drinks. I really do want to write this for you. Ask me to write it and I will write it." So a couple weeks went by. I finally called the writer director up and I said, "Write it." They said, "Finished, done. I've got it. I'll have it for you by the end of the month." They did. I read it. I loved it. The writer and director said, "Make me some money and we'll get it made." And then I spent a good 2 months Googling everything, like what's the difference between Indiegogo and GoFundMe and all these other platforms. I also happen to work as a teaching artist for a nonprofit, and we do tons and tons of fundraising, as all arts organizations do. So I kind of understood what I would need to do to crowdfund, but it still didn't dawn on me how much of a full-time job it would be for the amount of time that I campaigned to raise the money. The original ask was for $5,000. I raised 10. We ended up needing more than that. It all went by really, really quickly.
That's
So
amazing. That's incredible, right? Again, all hands on deck. It's great to have. I've never had anybody say, "I'll write something for you." That's what a compliment there.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. And once I saw the script, I was asked, do you know where this comes from? And I said, no. And the writer said one line that you said at dinner that night, which was, why does everyone keep asking me I'm single? And she wrote, and that conversation had happened a
Wow.
year or two prior. But that's what writers do. They remember everything. So be kind to your writer friends because you never know.
Know what they're going to come up with. Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Anybody else?
I can go next. Yeah, so I wrote, directed, and produced, and the idea of telling the story of my family and the story of the diaspora, just kind of started a while ago. My background is in photography, and for many years it was a photographic project until until my studying in grad school, where I study more filmmaking, and I developed it in one of my last classes as a film, and I think this was the best kind of format, and just like Kaylin, it was a very personal project. It took a long time to edit and see which stories to tell, how to tell them. I was also working very closely with my mother, and making sure that, she is also comfortable in, what stories I'm being told, I am telling, and how I'm telling them. And that's also the original original plan was written in pre-COVID time. It involved traveling, and then of course COVID happened and I had to rethink it, and there was like a plan B and plan C, and and then as a result I got this film, which I'm really happy about. And I think it would be very different, maybe very different film if it wasn't for COVID. It would be like, I would in my head, it would be wider, but not as deep maybe. So in a way, COVID was kind of a blessing, that helped. And I try to look at it was a positive kind of attitude, that it helped me to create the film that you can see now. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think we've had some other conversations about COVID, how that's kind of, influenced the process for a lot of creators in the past couple of years. And I'm curious, as I want to hear a little bit more about that later on, in terms of like, do you think that will make more of an impact as we kind of keep creating more of that collaborative space, that we don't always have to be together to make projects come alive? But I want to hear about the process, and we're missing someone here. I know we are. Oh, yes. Sorry. Yes, please tell us a little bit about your process and what it was like for you to create your piece that's in the Imagine This Women's International Film Festival now. I'd love to hear about it.
Sure thing. So for Directed by Us was something that it was a digital platform. So I would collect articles about people locally and images of what they're doing as in the Bronx, specifically creatives and entrepreneurs. And that grew through social media. But the Maria Mejia, who's the episode that's in this film festival, I had known her since 2015. We collaborated on and off. Eventually, she hired me in 2018 to make a commercial piece for her brand, but we were both unhappy with it. And I found that it was because I was misaligned with telling a commercial story where I wanted to kind of tell her story, just to make it more intimate and more aligned and more relatable. So we did that by creating this episode. of directed by us. And sometimes it's not always a bad thing to make a bad piece. Sometimes a good thing can come out of it, and I think this is a perfect example of that. In terms of like scripting and asking questions, this definitely taught me how to build rapport with a subject. Even though I knew Mariel, it informed how I can write questions and how I can get to know people, not just like socially, but also with other episodes and other creatives and entrepreneurs that I might not know for that long compared to Mariel. So that was the process for that, to get information from her, to use that as a way to tell the story. And I married that with my experience in photography and cinematography, so that not only can I tell the story, but it's also visually engaging for viewers. And that's satisfying for me, just as a creative. I submitted to Imagine This because I attended Imagine This Film Festival a couple of years back. And I was like, wait a minute, this sounds like this is in alignment with what I'm creating. Our production for this was all women, with the exception of the composer, who is male, but he is from the Bronx. And yeah, that was pretty much the process for creating this and submitting to this film festival, which I'm happy to be here, grateful for.
We're happy to have all you guys here. That's amazing, right? I'm still kind of just wrapping my head around everything that you guys have just shared and said. And I think that one thing that I asked in the last panel was that if there's any advice that you have for somebody who's a first time, who's a rookie, that's never done this before, doesn't even know how to turn a camera on, maybe has all these different ideas they want to write about, what's some advice that you would give someone just, to get started?
The first bit of advice I would give is to use your community. And if it doesn't feel like you have community, I guarantee you do. Even if it's their first time being a filmmaker, most of us have been involved someplace in creative arts, entertainment, theater. So there is a community. I think that the lesson for me that I learned from this writer was, don't be afraid to ask for what you want, and to remember that you are deserving of opportunities when they come into your lap. But when those opportunities come, be prepared to do the work. I was saying during our meet and greet on Friday, I have so much respect for every single one of the folks in credits of movies and TV shows now. I mean, I've worked on sets before, but there's something different when you're the one that's paying the paycheck to be like, oh yes, that DID person is really important, because if the card falls into the river, you're screwed, right? So I think my biggest piece of advice, to sum it up shortly, use your community, ask for what you need, and do the work.
Oh, I love that so much. Thank you. Thank you.
From my perspective, my advice is to similar to Halima's advice, is to shadow people. Usually when I want to learn something and I feel like, oh, I could do this at a larger capacity, but maybe I want to dip my toe in. Sometimes I like to offer something pro bono, like BTS photography, and that allows me to be like a fly on the wall on different productions, so that I can see what I would do if it were my production, what I wouldn't do, and then you could get some firsthand, secondhand advice from there. And it's I guess a more relaxing way to make connections with people and build community. So think of ways that you can provide value to people that could be your mentors, and find mentors. That's something that I wish I had learned earlier on. So that's my advice.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's, great advice. I mean, it seems like simple to do, but, it's always like that ask, right? And going back, like, yes, you deserve this opportunity, right? Like, to shadow somebody. And it's also kind of keeps the stakes low, right? Because you're just, got that, what you said, fly on the wall approach, and then absorb. And I think female filmmakers have this multifaceted, I mean, it's just, we can do this, right? We can do all of it. Sometimes when you meet the male counterparts, they're like, I do this. And then women are like, I do everything. So That's what I think is really quite fascinating just in general, but that's shifting as well. So yeah, tell me what's some advice that you guys, Caitlin, that you would give to a first timer, someone that's just starting out?
I think something that I really had to learn was I create for myself to tell the stories that I want to tell. And I think even though that could be a very individualistic and narrow-minded approach, I think a lot of creative people are like, well, what if people won't like it? What if I post something bad online or something? Like, what if my art isn't good enough and holds up to all the great art that I'm seeing? And I think that it's, you just have to keep creating no matter what, instead of being afraid of the rejection of, oh, what if I only get one like on my Instagram post or something. It's not about the reception, because if you keep creating this art, people will find you and you'll find your peers, and soon you will build a community, like Halima was saying. And mentorship is a great way, like just meeting people randomly. Like, I never dreamed of being on such a cool Zoom call last Friday with so many awesome filmmakers. And yeah, anyway, just create for yourself, I guess. Like, create what you love and people will come and the rest will follow.
Oh, I love that advice, because you're right. I mean, you don't know how people are going to react or not react. So if you do it for yourself, you are going to get better and better at your process. Then, it can have some breathing room in there in terms of like audience reaction. And then it's just more opportunity as a creator to keep going, keep going, keep going. So, but that's great advice, because I know the first one out the door is always the hardest one. I know it was for me. And I was like, okay, my goal is to get into 5 film festivals. You kind of create these little mini goals, and then you make that goal and you're like, oh my gosh, I think I could really do this. So great advice. Thank you.
I think would help me. One thing, there will be rejections, and I think it's important not to take it personally. And I find it easier to think of rejection as not that you are not good enough, but is that you are in an environment where so many other people are just as good and maybe just a little better, more appropriate to certain time, to certain topics, but you're just one of many of the great ones, and now that you are, you're not doing something, you're doing something wrong. Just a slight change of the mindset that really helps you with rejections that are unavoidable.
I mean, that's great advice too, because just in terms of like, this is, a lot of work, and I don't think people understand the process, right? I mean, what it takes from your idea to making it happen, and then, having other people watch it. It definitely is passion within to do everything that you guys do as well as creators. I do have a question in the chat for Lydia. How did your family and your community respond to your film?
Positively. I was very nervous, even
Yeah,
though
I bet that's you're like, I could be hearing about this for a while.
Yes, it was very, I was very nervous to show, even though there's nothing negative, but you never know how people can react. And that was, I think there was a sort of appreciation of the story being recorded, because there's not many people that know about us. And just the fact that I just created this record in the global archive, I think that's how many people looked at it, and receive that. So it was positive. No one hated it. No one hated me. Still talking with, with all my family members.
Well, and I think like we can be our own worst critic, right? I mean, we can be really hard on ourselves, and then to do something, you're casting a family member, and then I mean that just the stakes get higher and higher because it's just they're going to be raw and intimate with you, right? So I think when you kind of have crossed that space and you're like, okay, yeah, now I can, if I did this with my family or this topic, I think whatever happens next is you can handle it. I mean, the rejection piece, I mean, if that comes into play, I have, I'm kind of like thinking about like just how different everybody's pieces are in terms of producing and bringing this all together. And I think, how do you guys balance out the acting and producing piece? I mean, especially in this short, Sorry, I'm trying to think how you did that because you're in the piece and then producing. So what was that like playing kind of both roles for you?
It was very, very, very challenging. And I'm grateful that I do have a pretty expansive artistic community. And the night before the shoot, I was trying to memorize lines because we didn't have a rehearsal beforehand. And the director and the DP were in one place, and I had a PA running to pick up equipment from some equipment share thing that I had never heard about. And then I found out I didn't have enough insurance. It was a zoo. And a friend of mine runs a production company. And she said, "What are you doing? You sound like you're on the edge. This should be fun." I said, I am. And I said, "But I think we're going to run out of money before I even step foot on set. And I have to go buy wardrobe. Like I have to get wardrobe for everybody." And so she came on as a UPM at midnight the night before our shoot and said, "I'm there. I will be there. I'm going to run your set because you cannot be a producer tomorrow. Tomorrow you need to be an actor. Like you just have to do it." And thankfully, the other lead, Michael Stahl David, he's done tons and tons of stuff. So I was immediately a little intimidated. I was like, "Oh my gosh," because I didn't cast him, so I hadn't met him, and in fact, I had thought that from prior discussions it was going to be an older white man. So when he walked in, I went, "Oh, Annie's cute. Oh, good. All right. Well, I wasn't planning on this." And he was able to sit with me while we were waiting for different setups to say, "Listen, you've definitely have decided to do a lot. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is not easy because I know you're probably thinking, is the steady cam person okay? Are we not going to go into overtime? And your lines, let's just take it one scene at a time. And right now, just be an actor. Trust the people that we've hired here and just be an actor." So I felt really supported on set to be able to say, pulling this hat off for the next however long our shoot was, and now I'm just going to act. Would I do it again? No. it was really challenging, really challenging. I'll always treasure it, but I don't know if I could produce on such a small set and also act, but I'm glad that I did it.
Yeah, I didn't realize that you also that you did both, because when you watch your piece, Sorry, we just see you, you're acting, and as you said earlier, this is your calling card, right? I mean, so how has this piece helped you in terms of being your calling card?
Well, it's doing really well on the festival circuits, and COVID, the pandemic has definitely put a wrench into some things. I've cut my hair off since this was shot, and it's now grown out and it's curly. So I just got new headshots. I'm starting back on the casting and agent workshop tour pretty soon. But I think if and maybe this is just my ego, I think the way that has helped me as my calling card is that being able to do this, especially as a Black woman, telling a story written by another Black individual, reminds me that this is possible, that I can tell stories that aren't just about trauma, that joy can be political, that we all deserve to be represented in all the different types of genres that we see that maybe we don't see BIPOC women. And for someone that really wants to do romantic comedies and comedies in the future, being able to do this for me was like, yes, you can. You absolutely can do this. And so now I hope that, there's a little stardust and a little magic, and I meet a couple more people to add to the team, and we keep moving forward.
That's great. I mean, does anybody else have any thoughts about that or want to share more about? Oh, we have another question for Lima Mary. How did you find your subjects in the chat?
That's a good question. So most of my subjects I know on a personal way, and they tend to, I guess, approach me, but like not on the note of, can you create something for me? It's kind of like they built a rapport in a social way, and then either they become like a client where I can make stuff for them, or I feel called to tell their story, and I do that, and I find ways to fund to tell that story. So those are the different ways that people find me is usually very social, very like friend gregarious, or word of mouth. Sometimes when I put directed by us content out there, like on social media, other people that I don't know offhand find me. So then the cycle begins again. And I'm like, this is a cool person. I can tell their story. Let me find a way to tell it, whether it's through making an episode of Directed by Us and finding funding, or whether they hire me for it, or maybe I can do something more less labor intensive, like doing a photo shoot for them. But I try to find some way to tell their story if I feel called to. And similar to what Halima said, I feel like it's important, like representation is important, but not just in front of the camera, but like behind the camera, because who better to tell our stories than the people that relate to them? So that's a way that I find people, mostly word of mouth.
That's amazing. And you talked a little bit about the digital format. I mean, what have you found that's been successful, or different barriers that you've had to overcome in terms of, getting those stories out there through that digital platform? What's that been like for you?
It's been a challenge in a sense. The non-challenging part was finding subjects, because I'm like, well, everybody's out here, and I'm in a place where I can connect with a lot of people, not just socially, but through my day job and everything. I work at a public access television station in the Bronx, so that it makes it very easy for me to find subjects. So that's the non-challenging part. We have an overflow of that. But in terms of telling the story in the quality that I want to, I apply to fellowships. I apply to different ways, trying to get grants and things like that. And that's really the challenging part. But sometimes it's not challenging. Sometimes those things kind of come to me, and I'm like, wow, like there really are opportunities out there when you're like, I guess, your antennas are out and you're open enough and you're sharing instead of like holding it in, which sometimes we tend to do, is just like, let me hold it in because I feel like it's not perfect. But when you put things out there, things tend to just cycle in. So I would say the challenging part is being set on like, oh, if I could just get this fellowship, if I could just get this grant, that's really where the challenge is. But the opportunities are out there.
Yeah, I feel that when you open yourself up to different ways for the universe to kind of help you out, then you're like, oh, yeah, that works out great. I mean, I'm working on a feature in LA and I'm based out of Colorado. And I'm like, so how am I going to do this? Like back and forth, back and forth. But then, I was telling my CPA, and she's like, oh, yeah, there's a new airline opening up at Loveland, like 20 minutes from my house, that goes into Burbank. And I was like, this is amazing. So yeah, the universe kind of has your back in different ways, with different opportunities if you're open, like you said, with the antennas up and going, and not closing your ideas, but kind of telling people your ideas, even though they're like way out there, but you just, keep that openness. And I think that's keeping that heart open, right? And I think that's the beauty of like all the amazing work that you guys do and bring to the process, and being creators and being here with us, and also being part of this incredible film festival. I think just brings in so many diverse voices and representation, like from around the world. It's incredible. Um, so yeah, thank you. I mean, we have just like a few more minutes. Okay, wait. So here, one more. Kaylin, what would you do differently with your film? It's a question in the chat. If you would do something different, what would it be for this particular piece?
The list goes on and on.
You're like, where should I start?
Right. I'm definitely a perfectionist, and this story means so much, and there's so many other things that I didn't get to include. Because, sorry. So, yeah. Hang on, my coworker's in a meeting.
Okay. Yeah. No, we know you guys are working, and we appreciate you just being part of this. So you were talking about how you're a perfectionist. Like,
yes,
I'm pretty sure most of us could probably relate to that too.
Yeah, I would say I would make it a bit longer. I would include her children, because she did have children at the time, and I think that they're important in the story, but at the moment I wasn't able to include them. But so yeah, I think I would definitely try to tell a truer story, take a little bit less artistic, changes. And yeah, that is a good question, because the list is very long. And I honestly don't think whatever I make is ever going to be perfect. But, as long as I just keep making things, I'll be good.
Yeah, I would love to open up that question to anybody else. Like, if you could do something differently about your piece, what would it be and why?
I'll jump in. If I could do anything differently about the piece, there was a shot at the very end on the rooftop, and we ran out of light. And I'm really sad that we couldn't get it. We had shot so much. And the first AD was screaming, "You have to take this shot right now. All of Manhattan is about to light up," because it was getting to be dusk, and the skyscrapers, the lights were starting to come on. And at that moment, they were low enough that it didn't change the shot. But just as we started to do our lines, literally the entire city, One World Trade, everything just lit up behind us, and it was just this energy drop. So if I had to do anything differently, we would have shot that scene first. Just because it was such a gorgeous setup, and I'm really sad that no one gets to see it.
I can quickly say that I, just like Kaylin, it was also the editing process could have taken forever and forever. And at some point I had to stop. And I look at those parts of the story that I had to remove as a maybe potential continuation and doing something else. So I don't think it would change anything, but I would want to continue developing this into something more.
Yeah, I'm gonna say the same thing, because if these film festivals didn't have deadlines, then then I'd still be shooting this. So I'm gonna say the same. It's always down to the editing process. You think you have it, and then you're there, and you're like, they call it killing your babies, at least in documentaries. So yeah, I would add more to it, add more to the story.
Yeah, to go off of that, scope is very important, but sometimes can be your worst enemy. So yeah, and also what Lydia, since, you know, like these real stories that we're all telling, like where do you cut things, and is the integrity of the story actually being kept when you're cutting things? I think that is a very tricky line to walk.
Yeah, I mean, that's a space where you just want to honor the stories, and then you only have so much time, and then what stays in, what stays out, can be a very like tug of war process. Um, because you also are bringing people in and entertaining them, and at the same time, representing other voices that are being heard in this process too. So yeah, it's a delicate dance is what I call it. So yeah, well, you guys, this was amazing. We just have a few more minutes left, and I would love, like, if anybody has any final thoughts, questions. Oh no, this is what I want to do. Sorry, I'm gonna sidestep here. Please tell us how we can get in touch with you. Your website, social media handles, all that good stuff, because this is being recorded, so other people can like reach out to you guys. So thank you.
For me, it's my first and last name. It's the website and handle on Instagram.
For me, it's at Directed by Leo. That's on Instagram, TikTok, everywhere. You'll see my website there as well.
My website is kaylintelamonte.com, and my Instagram is KaylinIArts.
Hi, Instagram. It beeped and it threw me off. Halima Henderson is my website, www.halimahenderson.com. Socials at Halima Henderson, and then you can find the link to the Sorry Instagram page there as well. And I just want to say thank you so much, Chantal, for moderating this. It's so fun to talk to everybody.
Oh, great. Thank you. I mean, this is like such an honor to do this and be here with you guys. It's awesome. So I think this is it, guys. I mean, the festival's still going on for the next few days, and if you get a chance, make sure to check out everybody else's work. It's incredible, incredible films. So yeah. So I think that's a wrap, unless anybody else has something else to say. But thank you to all for being here, and we just really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.